Um, Hello, welcome back, Paragliding World. My name is Ed Ewing. I'm editor of Cross Country Magazine, and today we're going to be talking to paragliding guide and author of Mastering Paragliding, Kelly Farina. So some of you will remember that we did a few of these Facebook Lives earlier in the year when we had our first lockdown in March and April. And I don't know about you, but that seems like a long time ago now. Some of us are now in our second lockdown. Anyway, some of us aren't, but we just thought we'd bring some of these interviews back and do a few more for the end of the year. Just talk to pilots from around the world. So yeah, 2020, what a year. Kelly Farina, he was born in London in the UK. He got into paragliding from snowboarding and skateboarding more than 20 years ago, and it changed his life, basically. He moved to the Alps, he got into the competition scene, he became a paragliding guide, a respected paragliding guide, and then he wrote a best-selling book about how to master the art of paragliding. But I don't want to witter on here. Let me introduce the man himself, Kelly Farina.
How you going, guys? Hello, everybody.
Hello, Kelly. How you doing?
How you going, Ed? Yeah, good, man, good. Hello, everybody, wherever you are.
Excellent. Where are you just now, Kelly?
I'm in a small town called Hua Hin, just about 2.5 hours south of Bangkok in Thailand.
In Thailand, okay. And how has the lockdown or the whole year been for you down there?
Well, it was a bit sketchy in the beginning. Then things have kind of got back to normal. But I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. Every day playing it by ear, really. Yeah? I think the same as everybody.
For sure. I guess like a lot of guides working this year, you had to cancel courses, things like that.
Everything.
Everything cancelled.
I postponed everything until 2021 because I didn't want to drag anybody to Europe, to mainland Europe, and then find that they couldn't go back, or if they had to go back, there'd be a stressful situation with their work, with two-week quarantine or whatever it was. I think it was the right thing to do, and yeah, I'm looking forward to 2021. Let's see what happens, huh?
Yeah, cool. So there is a reason we asked you on here today, and that reason is that finally your book has been translated into French. And there it is. There's a picture of the first edition that came to us through from the printer, and that is on its way now to the UK, to our warehouse, and we will be shipping that out now. If you're French and you want to buy that book, the book is already translated into German, but that will be on the XD shop and with dealers, and you'll be able to get that in time for Christmas. So congratulations, you're now published in English, German, French, and I think Russian. Russian
as well. And Anastasia, she was in contact with me about what some of the stuff meant. But yeah, I'm stoked, man.
Excellent, good. So Mathilde Chivet did a big job of translating the book into French, and it's also got lots of new content. Charles Cazot, former world champion, he's written a whole chapter on how to fly Annecy, so it's very orientated towards French pilots. Anyway, there we go. Congratulations on that, Kelly. I bet you didn't think that we'd this far when we started out. Yeah.
I bet you thought I'd never put it together, right? It was just like, yeah. When it's ready.
Cool. Anyway, let's look at today. What we've got lined up is we're going to talk about three things. Three things. Safety, thermaling, and the weather. If you're sitting down and you're going to watch this and you're in for the long haul, we're aiming for about 40 minutes. So settle in and feel free to comment. Ask some questions. Hello, Rafael Rispoli from Brazil, Richard Shutt from the UK. Hi, Anne. Hello, Pete Logan from Yorkshire.
Hey, Pete.
And Frederick de Posch. Oh, we had conversation about that. That's interesting. Anders Lindmarker. Translate it into Swedish. That's the next one. Cool. So the thing I like about you questions, if you want to ask some questions, please do just fire them in there and we'll try to get to them. One of the things I like about Kelly is that he calls a spade a spade. And if you don't understand what the word spade means, he'll just look at you and say, dig. You know, he's very straightforward. Lots of people like that. I like it. I went on a course with you a few years back, and it was great. You taught me to sit up in my harness, to think about my body position, to really treat flying as a sport. And I think that comes from your snowboarding and your skiing, your skating background. So to walk a little bit, sorry.
Yeah, and learning a new sport many years ago, the Wing Chun really helped to formalize it.
So tell me a little bit about that, Wing Chun.
So it's soft skill martial art, about 330 years old, and it's very much based on feeling and reacting without conscious, clumsy thought getting in the way. So it's very similar. It's got a lot of parallels with paragliding that way. And they have a kind of pyramid of what you have to learn first to cement the foundation and then move on to the next one and the next one and the next one. There's no point shooting for the higher techniques when you don't have the basics dialed. So that was a real eye-opener for me. Because we're a new sport. We're only like 30 years old.
Paragliding?
Yeah, as opposed to something that's been around for like centuries.
Okay. So you mentioned it there, so we may as well bring it in now, the pyramid of progression, which you took from, let me see if I can squiggle that around a bit. Is that better? Is that all right? You took from the, if I disappear, then you can just talk about the pyramid of progression. But basically, tell us what the pyramid of progression is.
So the foundation lies at the bottom with ground handling. And then, back then I put carving and mapping as part of the thermaling part of the foundation. But since then I decided that watching enough people struggle learning to carve, I decided to slip another one in between ground handling and carving. And it's to do with understanding the dynamic of your equipment, i.e. understanding how much lean, how much weight shift, and how much brake initiates what radius of turn, and understanding how to halt the glider above your head when you need to. There's no point telling people to turn at a certain radius if they don't know how to do it. So I slid that in there. And then that moves on to the XC pilot. So route planning and route adaptation, and then moves on to the top, which is lines, which is route adaptation in the moment. Speed to fly, not just speed to fly, but how to fly faster. We're not going to talk about that today because that's like quite high level. And obviously the last one is what we're all aiming for. I still haven't got there yet. Where we are just doing everything in flow state, where we're just going from climb to climb to climb and line to line to line and linking everything up and making go.
So I think one of the things that attracted me about the text when you sent it through to us first at Cross Country was that this was actually the first time I'd seen that sort of pyramid of progression applied to paragliding, to flying. And for anyone who just learns, you know, you're sort of thrown off, you do your qualification, you get your stuff, and then you're on the hill. And it's like, well, how do I get to there? How do I get to be a sky god or even just be an XC pilot? And actually what this does really usefully is set out the stages. And that understands how you teach as well, doesn't it?
Exactly. If I'm on the lower weeks, the less experienced, then I don't touch the higher techniques. Obviously, people like to ask questions about it, and I'll never turn down a question. But again, it's running before you can walk, or walking before you can stand. So yeah, I mean, I don't see that we can do anything different than this. This is, for me, I had a lot of hours talking with people, even with Nick Grease. We were talking about what is at the top, I think I described that in the book, actually, what was at the very top. But that's another thing. I'm digressing already.
Listen, one of the things that I looked through the book again in preparation for this, and there are quite a few quotes of yours that we've highlighted in the book, and they're sort of Kellyisms. And so that we almost call this book Zen and the Art of Paragliding, because it's just full of Kellyisms, and it's like, oh yes, bow to the master. So I'm going to flash up a few, and people can read them, and then you can tell us. So I'll start with the beginners. Here's a good one. If our skill set is a toolbox, the beginner has little more than a monkey wrench. I mean, that's packed, especially the idea of a toolbox in your skill set. Can you talk a little bit about that? How do you fill the toolbox?
Training different techniques. So sometimes when you do leave school, you've got nothing more than a utility tool, just that's good for everything, but really not good for subtleties, or it's not really good for banging in a post. So you need to learn a sledgehammer for the strong springtime thermals in the Alps, and you need to have a small screwdriver for your sunglasses for the real light technical stuff. So that's what I mean by this quote. To see that our skills are a complete range of tools. As even just coming to launch and being flexible on what launch you're going to use, whether it's going to be an alpine launch because there's a light backwind, or you're going to use Cobra because it's howling, or are you going to use a running reverse because that's what you're used to.
So it's about looking at the conditions and thinking, today I'm going to use this.
Yeah, well, that's when you're on launch, or when you finally clip in, that's what you're going to set yourself up for. But eventually, when you do it often enough, then you don't have to think about it anymore. You start to know that you need a screwdriver, that you need a small hammer, that you need your courage and timing and to fly in the strong stuff,
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's one quote that I really liked. Here's another one, which is properly spade a spade, chat. Dogs and pirates bury things we should not.
All right.
What does that mean, Kelly?
What does that even mean? Right, well, when you've spent enough time on the hill, you would hear a lot of, when I hit the core, I buried the brake. Now, what that little misnomer is passing on from 100-hour expert to red ribbon pilot over the course of the sport is kind of a bit of a disservice. What will happen if you hit the core and you just bury the inside brake is that you'll swing out, the glider will swing forward, you'll wildly swing underneath the glider, your vario will now lie to you. Once your vario starts lying to you and starts cheating on you where the core is, it's very difficult to then start to map. So that's what I mean by dogs and pirates should bury things we should not. We should be more subtle than that.
Cool. This one sort of follows on from that. Practice efficient carving enough, and before long it will become your style. Tell me what carving is, because we never hear carving from our instructors or from anyone else.
Carving is just a term I use for turning the glider, because it just feels like you're carving a line. Sometimes you're on rails, sometimes you open and close the carve. It's a perfect imperfect circle that you can move around the sky, opening and closing it in the direction that you feel will give you the stronger climb. And obviously, if you practice something that's efficient, or practice something that actually works and you get rewarded often enough, then you'll see that it works. You don't need convincing, and then it just becomes your style. It's just practice makes perfect, basically. That's what that means.
Okay, cool. This is a fourth one. We've got 5 of these, 4 out of 5. The pilot shall keep their own body's progress through the air as smooth and constant as possible. And for that, you mean every second of your flight, don't you?
Exactly. That's like the ultimate efficiency rule. Really funny, I haven't heard that spoken out loud for over a year since I touched a paraglider last. So this is what I call the golden rule of smoothness And whether you're thermaling, whether you're gliding, whether you're searching for a climb, just to take out the bumps, swings and surges, to be the, how do I call it, the suspension to the air. And the smoother you are, like I said, the vario will lighten you less, so you can act on that. And also that you'll glide better, that you won't like swing around underneath the glider like a monkey on a trapeze, throwing height over the side of the harness like you're bailing out a boat.
Cool. So everything's smooth, no digging.
Everything's smooth. The smoother you can be, even if you do something aggressive, you need to then bleed that energy out. So if you build energy into the turn, you need to bleed that out. Otherwise, you just drop the nose, swing through, lose height, vario lies. Next turn, you don't know where the climb is. It's all connected. The whole sport, from start to finish, it's about efficiency. Because our efficiency is terrible. Let's face it, 10 to 1 is. It's not a sailplane. It's not an albatross. So we need every help we can get, and that comes from the grey matter swinging underneath it. Cool.
And finally, number 5, and we can talk about this. We're going to safety actually from this one. Observation suffers when pilots fly wings that are too demanding. I mean, this is pure zen of paragliding, isn't it?
Very, very, very true. Observation, observation, observation. So if your glider is stealing your bandwidth, that you can't look, let's say, in rings like a tree, yeah. So you can't see that someone's climbing better than you 100 meters away because the glider is shouting at you and distracting you. That's a bad situation to be in, just for efficiency. You can't see how old that cloud is down the road. You can't see there's a group of pilots climbing or a bird climbing because your observation is done.
Because you're too worried about flying the thing above your head.
10-meter bubble. You're stuck in this 10-meter bubble rather than looking 10K downwind or 10K down route, or even like just to avoid somebody close to you, you know.
So what do you fly yourself? What category of glider do you fly?
I fly an EMB.
Mm-hmm.
A high, well, I don't really like using the word high B, but kind of a performance B. Moderate aspect ratio, about 5.5. In conditions, you know it's there. You know, in strong conditions, you know it's there. It bites, but I know I can get close to the terrain. I trust it, and it's not going to do anything weird.
Have you? I mean, tell us a bit about your background, because you did competitions for a long time. You're actually around the sport when the competition wings were very difficult to fly.
Yeah.
How did you get on there? Did you struggle with the wings at the time, or what?
You know, at the time we didn't know any different. Yeah, I think everybody struggled. There was same as these days. I mean, there was a horrendous attrition rate. I used to call it radio doom. I just used to turn the radio off because within 15 minutes of the gun going off, there was someone coming down underneath their reserve on a proto. You know, I mean, that was just it back then, back in the mid 2000s. But the gliders got better, the glider performance got better, but it's still, you know, they're edgy wings. I choose not to. I haven't actually flown a two-liner. They've been around for 10 years. I haven't actually touched one.
When you have clients come out, where do you guide mainly?
I'm in Bassano, del Grappa, in northern Italy, in the foothills where the flats meet the Alps. And we do an alpine course in Greifenberg in Austria.
Okay. And what sort of wings are your clients usually on? Do you ever see clients on wings that are too much for them? How do you deal with that? What do you say to them?
You know, sometimes, yeah, it's difficult, you know, because they're used to flying maybe on the coast and maybe with a couple of 100 hours, laminar air, and then they decide to buy maybe an ENC because they feel that will give them the penetration that they need on the cliffs. And then they take it to the Alps in the middle of June with a banging stable forecast and wonder why they have a completely different glider above them that they do on Willock and Bay. I'm just plucking names out of the sky now, but you understand my point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Byron, Willock Bay, coastal flying, easy place to fly a glider.
Well, I would consider it more sedate than Zillertal in the Lee at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in the middle of June. I mean, that's how we used to say when we got new gliders, like back in the early 2000s. We'd say, how do you think it would behave in the lee of the Hamburg with a 25k wind? That would that would tell you everything you needed to know about that glider.
I'm glad you mentioned the lee because we're going to come on to that. So I've got a couple of basic questions here. Talk us through how do you hold your brakes? Talk us through these 4 different things and tell us how you hold them.
Well, we got A, I think, is just a normal one, right? That's just holding the brakes as they're intended or as they come out of the factory. B looks like the classic half wrap. It's cut off the picture, but and I think C is what I would call and what is known as the dragon grip. And D is just holding the knot above the keeper, or above the knot, holding the line above the knot. Nothing wrong really with any of them. It's up to I would never tell a pilot to use a certain way. I'll just shine a light on the pros and the cons. The first one, A, I'm not a big fan of because I start using bigger muscle groups. Yeah, I should probably explain about that. In my opinion, or over the time that I've been flying paragliders, I fly with B because it puts my hand higher. And when my hand is higher, I use a smaller muscle group, which is better for listening. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do when we're trying to balance forces between left and right in our brakes. We're trying to listen. So trying to put that through big muscles like the tricep, which is on A, is probably not the most sensitive muscle or the right tool for the job, as I said earlier, yeah? So I will use B for that reason. Some people say that it cuts off the circulation in their hands. It's because they're doing it wrong or they're keeping it on all the time. Moving on to C, that's my least favorite out of all of them because you're actually putting your hand through. I got nothing against people doing it. It's up to you, you know, but for me, I try not to padlock myself to anything or handcuff myself to anything because worst case scenario, I'm low level, big deflation, line twist, I need to get my rescue out. It's very difficult to then get my hand out of the loop if I've got big gloves on, especially in spring flying in the Alps, and then go for my reserve. It might wind into something really nasty. I don't want to talk too bad about stuff like that, but there's a chance if you padlock yourself to anything. D, again, your hand is high. I don't see any problem with it, but you might get fatigue. That's all I can say about that. I mean, it's entirely up to you guys. I really have no, I'm not a grip fascist when it comes to how you hold your lines. You're dangling underneath it, not me, so you make your own decision.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so listen, let's talk about thermaling and tell us a little bit about carving and thermaling and how you use those words.
Okay, well, when I'm teaching carving, okay, so first of all, I explained that we need to achieve the correct radius, okay? Once we've got the correct radius, and we'll talk about that in a second, once we've got the correct radius, then we move on to the cleanliness, and then we move on to the ability to be able to move it around the sky, i.e. open and close the turn, as I said, the perfect imperfect circle. Oh yeah, so this picture, people ask why the first 90 in 5 seconds. Well,
let's go back a little bit and say what this picture shows. It shows your rule for thermaling, which is the 4-second rule, right?
Okay, so if you want to know how I developed that, I can explain a little bit about it. So back in 2009, when I started Wing Chun, I realized that there was definitely a better way to teach paragliding than shouting at people, turn tighter, because they had no real objective to aim for, you know, just screaming tighter at people didn't really help. So I went on a cross-country flight by myself and I watched what I did, where and when, and the outcome. So the first thing I noticed was that I turned at 16 seconds for each rotation. And that was a big eye-opener for me. So that came into the very handy rule of 4 for 90 because it's more catchy than 16 for 360. Simple as that. And then I also noticed something else that we're going to talk about a little bit later, hopefully. It's about mapping, but we'll talk about that when it comes. This was the main thing that I learned, that I was turning an average for 16 seconds for every turn.
So 16 seconds is really tight. It's much tighter than you think it's going to be. And certainly I've been in cross-country courses where I've been helping others turn. And it's like turn tighter, and their turn is 30 seconds. We had this article, Martin Morley did an amazing piece of research that he published in Cross Country just the other month, where he took 100,000 flights from the French League, and he number crunching it all. And he said the average turn for average pilots is around 25 seconds. You know, most pilots turning 22 to 25. So we can all tighten up. And he said that the top three, the winners of the French League for the past few years, they're all in the sort of 18, 19 second bracket. I think one was down to about 17. So 16 is tight.
Quite tight, yep. It's a quite tight term, but it's a compromise between sync rate and radius. Because what we're trying to do is to get our turning circle in a smaller area as possible, because that's going to be the climb. Either the climb is super small, or either the strongest part of the climb is the smallest part of the climb. The strongest part is the smallest part. Oh, there you go. You've got the cone there of turning. So do you want me to explain that? So at the very top, we've got like this guy here at the top. He's going, what's that, 15 seconds for 90 degrees. It's taking him a full minute to go around. His sync rate is very good. It's 1 meter a second. But if it was trying to put it in the core, it'd be in or out, in or out. I use the word, you're trying to put the saucer on the plate and not the plate on the saucer. Okay, so you're trying to move this saucer around the plate to the strongest part of the climb. And the guy at the bottom, sorry ladies, but the guy at the bottom is turning 4 seconds for a full 360 or 90 degrees for 1 second. He's got a huge sync rate. Okay, it's very, very tight and it's very maneuverable, kind of. But you're just falling straight through the cone of disadvantage, you know, you're just in a spiral dive. So that's useless as well. So there has to be some compromise, some perfect value between 1 second for 90 and 15 seconds for 90 right at the top. And I worked that out to be around 4 seconds for 90. With my size of glider, it's actually 5 for 90, 20 seconds on a large glider.
Right. Yeah, I remember flying with you and I was trying to get this 16 seconds. I was like, oh, it's really tight. And you were like, it's okay. 18 is fine.
18 is fine, because otherwise what you're doing is you're compromising your sync rate, because you're diving, the nose is just dropping that little bit.
Yeah, cool. Good. All right. Well, thank you for that. I think we'll move on now and chat a little bit about the weather, because I know you're a bit of a weather guru as well. You like to sit on the hills and watch the clouds and not take it all off the apps and the reality.
Spent a lot of time early on. I spent around 7 years in the beginning where I didn't have too much to do, and I would go up and watch the weather change. So it was always a hobby of mine if I couldn't fly. You know, being like the only English speaker in the valley, I didn't exactly have a huge social circle. So yeah, I just went and, like, people don't have that time these days, you know, to sit on a mountain for 7 years and watch the weather change.
No. Certainly, if you sit on the mountain now, half the time, everyone, we're all on our phone and ignoring what's going on.
This is before smartphones, though.
Yeah, of course. So listen, talk us through this, because this is a nice graphic because flying is very often about picking your day, isn't it? And at the beginning of flying, you want to go out in the strong wind, you want to go out in the light wind, and you want to get the best out of the day. But actually, if you get the right day and you've got okay skills, you will fly far and you'll have a great day. So can you just take us through, I'll hide myself, just shout if you want me to come back. Take us through this graphic.
Okay, so we've got, these are the 5 moods of the atmosphere. So one end is what I call fizzy, and the other end is what I call sticky. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but let's just go through this. So volatile is extremely fizzy. Imagine like just petrol, and if you just throw a match near it, it'll explode, i.e. thunderstorms. And then you've got excitable, maybe the day is not too long, but long enough for it to last for a short XC flight. And then the weather is cooperative with us in the middle, where it's the classic blend of stable and unstable. So unstable down low and stable up high, so it doesn't overdevelop too early. And then we've got lazy, where it needs a bit of encouragement to go. It's like higher pressure, a little bit more stable in the lower level, maybe some ledges in the Skew, but I'm not going to go into that now. And needs a bit more of a Bunsen burner to get it going, or a little bit more of a flame to get it going, i.e. the sun. So you might start later on those sort of days, and then the stubborn days, maybe there just isn't enough heat to get that amount of stability to move. So that's the 5 moods of the atmosphere, or as I haven't seen this diagram for ages.
So listen, what do you look at to make a forecast when you look at it in the morning, when you get up in the morning?
So I've got a few sites that I go to, but if I had to have just one, I know it's like, and I'm not going to go into it now. If I had to have just one, it would be a Skew, and if you learn how to read those, then the rest, because it's got wind, it's got everything on it that you need, really.
So for people who don't know, you've got a website and a YouTube channel, and there are Skew diagrams on there. You go through all of this. It's all there. We can put the links in the comments here, and you can find them.
Yeah, I can give you the link for that, and you can have a look at that. That will just put me to sleep if I start talking about those.
Let me show you another couple of pictures. I think this is your fizzy and your fizzy day. Is this a fizzy day? Yeah, fizzy day. So that's your fizzy day.
Okay. The top one is a fizzy day, and the bottom one is a more higher pressure, drier air, more stable, more sticky day. Both fun to fly. One's more hard edge, one's stronger because it needs a little bit more encouragement to leave the ground. The one at the bottom, obviously, and the one on the top. I think it wasn't long after that it actually OD'd and started to rain, if I remember rightly. I mean, you can see how green the terrain is compared to the one at the bottom. The one downstairs looks like Spain, and the one upstairs looks like the UK.
Sorry, I lost myself for a second. So you can learn a lot from the clouds and looking in the fizzy day.
Oh, for sure.
Now you mentioned what we're going to talk about next. You're known for your flying courses in the Alps and in Bassano. And I remember actually going out on a week with you a few years ago, and Charlie King came with us from cross country as well. And I remember we had a great group, and I remember taking off on the first day, and our plan was to take off, go along the ridge, get a turn point, and come back and all be together. And I remember I turned off and I took off, I turned left, and it was just bumpy and uncomfortable. And I just thought, oh no, I don't like this. I'm not happy today to do this for my first day. And I sort of went and landed. And then I was sort of pleasantly surprised that not so long afterwards, you called it and you said, let's not do this. It's too hard. It's too windy. And the reason was the wind in the mountains, and it was crosswind, and it was just making things uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I would like to look at these next 3 slides. And again, this is all explained in the book, but it was interesting to hear from you that you had developed this rule for flying in the mountains around wind, and specifically the lee. So let me bring one in, and then you can sort of lead us through this in progressively stronger, windier conditions.
Okay, let's have a look.
I've just tried.
Talking about. Okay, so you got like 5 kilometers an hour. It's next to nothing really. If the thermal is worth anything coming up in the lee side, then you won't really feel it. There might be a slight displacement of the core upwind, but normally really not a problem. 10 kilometers an hour, you start to feel it. Thermal starts to become a little bit more disturbed, but again, if it's worth its salt, if it's got any vertical development or speed, then it shouldn't really be that much of a problem. 10 is about, you know, where you start to feel it, but it's still not really that much of an issue with modern gliders if you know what you're doing. Might be a little bit more surgy. And then we've got 15 kilometers an hour. That's where you're going to start noticing that the core is definitely upwind of the climb. It's going to be much more hard edge. There's going to be a lot more sink. And unless the thermal grew in a protected area, it's going to be quite churned up. You imagine the hand of the Soot Dragon just sticking an egg whisk in the side of the mountain, winding it up and then pulling the Evel Knievel string. Then that thing is going to start rolling up the hill. It's probably the limit for recreational pilots. 20 is definitely, in my opinion, I mean, obviously some people can prove me wrong, 20 is definitely the limit for it being fun. It's going to be very pitchy, very draggy, bitey, hard-edged. There's going to be a lot of air falling down. As the rotor tends to tumble over the mountain, it starts to drag a lot of air from above as well. So you get like this double, not just displacement from the thermal, but also from the air that is being dragged down into the rotor. It's just not much fun. And then anything above that, you start really, all bets are off, Ed. You know, 25, 30 kilometers an hour. You won't catch me in it. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good example of it. The climb is completely pushed away and hard-edged, and maybe even the core is completely ripped away from the rest of the climb, you know.
Cool. Okay. So there we have a bit about wind. A couple of questions in there. Someone who had Stephen Lowe, we touched on it earlier. Stephen Lowe asked, could you explain a little bit more about the golden rule? You have this golden rule chapter in your book, and it's, again, we touched on it earlier. Can you tell us about the golden rule?
Okay, so the golden rule states that whatever you're doing with the glider above, by being the suspension that takes out the bumps, knocks, swings, surges, whatever is being thrown at you, your progression through the air should be as smooth as possible. Because if you allow your speed to increase, decrease, then you're suffering from swing throughs. And the more you can take out those bumps, swings and surges, the smoother you'll be. The vario won't lie to you. And yeah, you'll set your center on the climb a lot quicker.
Cool.
I hope that helps, Steve. If not, it's in the book, or you can write write a question and I'll have a look later.
Let's have a look one here from Martin Muller. And could you explain mapping? Okay.
So we described earlier about radius. Then the cleanliness is to do with the golden rule. And then the ability to open it and close it. So if someone wanted to know really what the secret is of mapping, okay, keep your weight on. Okay, so when you lean in, and you do your first orbit, your first 360, and you feel that the climb is stronger on one side, Martin, or anybody else who's interested, then open your inside hand, which means release your inside hand, open the calf, keep your weight on, and then after 3 or 4 seconds, that's 30 or 40 meters, you will go deeper into where the core is. And then slowly close on the inside, and you will initiate your turn again. Now, the reason why I say keep your weight on, or why that's the secret, is because if you straighten up, put both hands up, and then roll in, and then squeeze on again, you're going to always suffer this constant swing through on every 360. So I think there's a drawing in the book where it's like this constant, perfect, imperfect spiral, as opposed to this 360 straight line, 360 straight line, 360 straight line. Okay, that's the best I can describe it without being able to walk around my room and show you exactly what's going on.
Cool, thank you. Here's one. It's not really a question, but we can talk about. I'm sorry. Say again.
Basically, mapping is hunting on the strongest part.
Hunting on the strongest part. Okay, cool.
Opening on the strongest part.
Joelle Bartholomes. Hi, Kelly. I enjoyed my course in Bassano a lot.
Hey, Joel. How you going, man? Long time no see.
When was he out with you in Bassano?
Wow, that's got to be 8-9 years ago.
Okay, cool. What is it you like about guiding, Kelly? Rather than, I don't know.
Every day is different. You get to meet a lot of interesting people. And yeah, well, it's, after a while, Ed, it became, and even I think I wrote this on my website, it's like, it's gone beyond guiding now. Like guiding is it's definitely moved on to coaching. Mm-hmm. I'm not just showing people around like I was in 2002 when I started, just showing people around because I had no syllabus to pass on. But since now I see, in the beginning I was just happy people turned up, to be honest with you, Ed. And then after a while I said, oh, Jesus, I got like guys with 400 hours and I got guys with 5 hours. This is completely uncompatible. So then I decided to do firmament courses and XC courses. And then it just evolved from there, where I finally got a syllabus. I finally sat down and thought, what do I want to impart in a week? Because a week is a short time, you know it, right? Mm-hmm. And what I try to do these days is pass on 3 basic skills.
3 basic skills, and what are they?
Well, it depends on the level of the course. So if it's like an intro to XC and firmament course, then it will be carving and mapping and something to do with the weather. Okay, some low-level weather stuff. And every day on the launch, I'll do a short 5-minute talk about it and get people to. So when they go home, they've got something in their pocket. They've got another tool, and then that helps them stay up. Then that gives them a bit more confidence to leave the hill, and then before they know it, they've done their first XC.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. And for the XC courses, I try to. I always talk about cruxes, unless I've got a week of 2 people, like the same people on both weeks, because for me, cruxes are. I should have made it all in bold. That whole chapter in the book, I should have done it in bold, because although it's the first section of the cross country part, I think people underrate it. Because I see people making the same mistake. They're leaving the thermal too early, struggling on the other side.
Tell us what a crux is, first of all.
So a crux is like a part of the flight where you're going to get low. Okay, so you need as much height as possible. Sometimes there's a layer of stability. It might take you longer. So many pilots, they just to get that extra 300 meters can be the difference between having an easy ride on the other side or bombing out.
Okay.
Through being in too much of a hurry, just seeing like, hang on, this is where I need to put the brakes on. We talk like hundreds of pilots before me have spoke about changing gears. That's when you change gear. That's when you go, right, I need height.
It's about recognizing your crux. There is a crux ahead, slowing down, changing gear, getting height, getting across, then traveling.
Makes you get high, because on the other side, it's not going to be any easier because you didn't take height.
Okay. Listen, we got another couple of questions, and then we will wrap up because we're on the 45 minutes. Hello, Matilda. Hi, guys. I'll just show this one. Hi, Matilda. She was the translator of the French book. Lovely to see you on, working in the lab. Okay, this is a good one from Ben Morris. I love to fly. And actually, we were talking about this offline, was about currency. I love to fly, but this has been a poor year for getting some airtime in. As a low airtime pilot, how do you motivate yourself to get back into it?
How do I motivate myself to get back into it? That's a very good question, Ben. I haven't flown in over a year, mate. So I know I'm going to get back into it very cautiously. I'm sure I'm going to be quite nervous when I go to the hill. It's maybe a little bit different for me because I live at the bottom of it, but maybe you have the long drive. Use this time mainly to work out when you should go. So you don't drive all that way after a long layoff and then either be tempted to go out in conditions that aren't suitable, one, or go there and see that it wasn't suitable in the first place and it was just a 30-second top to bottom. That's not going to increase your motivation at all. Cool. That's all I can say about that.
And here's from Il Consigliere. Could you name a couple of key indicators for perfect XC days? Thanks a lot for this interesting interview, smiley face.
Well, you're very welcome. It depends where you are, you know. It depends where you are. If like the conditions that you need in the flatlands are very different to the perfect XC conditions you need in the Alps. Often perfect conditions in the flats will OD in the Alps. So yeah, it depends where you are. So what I'll look for is in the morning I'll look at a Skew T. Again, back to that horrible S word that sends Z's coming out of my mouth. I'm looking for the perfect sandwich between instability down low and stability up high. Again, if you want to know about that, you're going to have to go to YouTube channel. And then I think I've made about 8 movies in this lockdown. And that might help you. But another indicator is that the pressure is good for the area that you're going to. You want maybe a slightly lower pressure flats. They're more forgiving than more forgiving in the flats than in the Alps. You know, it will boil over in the Alps quicker than in the flats. Okay,
cool. Kelly, I think we're going to
we'll wrap it up.
We'll wrap it up. We're approaching 50 minutes. We're over 45. We promised everyone it would be 45. Listen, when can we see you back in? When do we hope to see you back in Europe and coaching again?
I'll be back in May 2021.
May 2021.
Yeah, I'm positive for next year. I think that once the geeks work out what this is, then I think we're on for next year.
Excellent, good. All right, well, listen, Kelly, thank you very much for your time, and thank you also to everyone watching and asking questions. It's been a really good afternoon, and yeah, have a great weekend, and if you are flying and can fly, have a good time. Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys. Be safe.